Hello, Facebook. Thanks again for coming back. I was gone for a week and I felt like I missed you guys so much. I have a moment to quickly thank my friends at Five Star Guitars for being a sponsor on this beautiful show, All Access Live. They've been with me from the beginning. And if you need repairs done, give them a call. Go to www.fivestarguitars.com, set up repairs, some lessons, and then get in there. They're doing a appointment only purchases for the greatest selection of guitars in the Northwest, right in Beaverton, Oregon. Before I get started, I want to congratulate and celebrate with my friends north of the border here. Happy Canada Day. It's a magnificent day for all of us Canadians. So my friend Murray Mcvay had reached out to another friend of mine in the Portland area to collaborate and bring together a booking environment to bring bands across the border, both directions. Murray Mcvay and I have gotten to know each other over the last few years, and I think we're going to have plenty of information on booking and the trials and tribulations of handling music as a business across the borders, and how the unity can come together between two neighboring countries. I've got two of the most phenomenal partners in that environment with me today on the phone and here on Zoom. I want to thank you guys both for being here, Murray Mcvay and Jason Fellman.
Hey, thank you very much, Kevin. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll take this off.
And you can keep it on, buddy.
No, I'm okay.
I'm okay. We have 6 feet between us.
I'm just used to wearing it up here that it's habit. But
as a responsible person.
Hey, Fel.
Hey guys,
How you
I'm
doing?
glad to be here.
I'm doing great, man. Just hanging out in the basement as usual.
Awesome.
Yeah. Murray and I actually talked a little bit about what you guys would be doing if there was no pandemic right now. So between the two of you, this is a huge booking week, right? So 4th of July weekend. How many gigs did you guys have booked for this week? Let's start with Murray.
I think for the week between Canada and US, I was at 11 or 12.
Okay.
Something like that.
And Jace?
The funny thing is, July 4th actually isn't a huge weekend for us, but if I were maybe, 6 or 7 gigs, it wasn't that much. Now, if we look at July and August in total, it's like 400, 500 shows. It's a lot.
Wow. 400 or 500. Yeah. All right. So you, what's the big event in Canada today, Murray, that you guys had scheduled?
Well, nothing really big got scheduled because a lot of it gets booked at a very last minute. And so in March and April, that's when everything, shut down.
Right.
But it was just mid-sized, shows here and there. I was hoping there was a couple larger festivals that I had pitched some acts to and was waiting to get some response. But, for me, if a show's a show, and as long as just if I got a single out there, a duo, band, anything just to keep going and keep the troops, playing is great. But, there was nothing extraordinarily big this year. And sometimes it's like the July 4th for you guys there's only a certain amount of shows up here, but I had some stuff out of town. But as we know, it's all sort of just on hold.
Sure. Well, some of the artists have been able to do single and duo sort of acoustic type shows in an environment that might be a little bit more secure and protected as far as distance goes. Did either of you guys have some of those that snuck through the cracks at all this week?
No.
I mean, I'm serious. I was thinking about this. Murray and I, we commiserate by phone, probably a couple times a week about this very topic. That there's just, most everything is canceled on this side of the border.
Yeah.
I think of all the stuff we have, I think there's like one random show in the middle of August that hasn't been canceled. Everything else in July and August is already off the books. It's a trip. And
I've noticed that just since we started this broadcast, I've got a whole bunch of friends, my friends from Canada on the East Coast. So Barry Davis, he's got a fantastic Tom Petty and also a Cars tribute over there. And he's also got a radio station there in Toronto, sports radio. I'm wondering if he maybe, they have a good handful of drive-in shows coming up out in that area. So maybe he'll chime in a little bit and see if any of those things are happening. The Spoons were going to be doing a show where they play on a dock out in the water and then have people parked in a parking lot. And then the PA and everything was going to be on the dock projecting. And they were calling it
Cool.
rock the dock, but we'll see. I think this conversation was not necessarily meant to sort of lament the fact that we're not out there playing. I think the great thing, I do want to talk about the unity and the camaraderie that was made when these two neighboring countries came together. Right now, there's a lot of divisiveness in our country. So let's talk a little bit about pairing and what makes it work between you two in order to collaborate and bring bands together on both sides.
Jason, if you wanted to maybe just start off on how we got connected, because you're the one that.
Yeah, it's a crazy story. But the bottom line is that we were looking for, after Hairfest 3, I believe it was, one of the pieces of feedback we had been given from one of our fans, and it was that we hadn't had a female-fronted tribute act yet. And we actually agreed that was a fair critique. And so we, initially I thought, well, what's the quintessential rock female-fronted tribute, that we could get, I'm like,
you said
we gotta
Taylor
find
Swift.
Taylor Swift. Yeah, well, I mean, today maybe, but no, it was so, like, Heart was the perfect band. And this is where it gets crazy. So I open up Facebook, right, just initially, and I'm, beginning the process of looking for a Heart tribute. And no joke, it just shows up in my feed, this video of Barracuda Heart tribute that Murray manages, and his wife, Donna, is the lead singer. And it's Barracuda singing Barracuda. This is like the first thing I look at when I begin my search.
That was Mark Zuckerberg listening to you.
This is the band, right? So I get on the phone and I call Murray and we start talking. And I guess, Murray, maybe you pick it up here. So I call Murray. I'm like, Murray, I got this Hairfest, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Murray, you take it from here.
Okay. So, and right behind me there's the Barracuda lineup. As of today, that show was at Spanish Ballroom in Tacoma. Awesome show. So what happened was Jason phoned me and goes, I just watched your video. He goes, excuse me, but holy beep, can she ever sing? And I went, yeah, thank you. He goes, would you want to do Hairfest? And in my mind, at that point in time in my career, I'd had a lot of inquiries from the US that just never panned out. Once I found out we were in Canada, it was like we were on the other end of the world, right? So I said, we'd love to, right? And we talked money and the deal was great. And I said, hey, when could I get a deposit or a contract? And boof, within like an hour and a half, I had a contract and a deposit. And, ever since that day, Barracuda, I guess, was the first band down for about a year or so. But since then, we've sort of just, joined. We're a lot alike as far as getting things done, right?
Yeah.
Like we're not, we answer calls, we answer emails. I mean, Jason, one of the things he taught me was the 24-hour rule for bands, right? Bands don't get back to you in 24 hours after you give them an offer, then we move on to the next.
You bet.
And that's just the way it is, right? It's so after Barracuda, then we did the Pat Benatar All Fired Up, which is also the Barracuda team. And then the third part of that is, hi Ray, is Ray Roper from Stonebolt, and these guys doing a bad company called Shooting Star, which we can do all 3 acts in one shot, called Triple Shot. So that's how it started, and that went for about a year. And then the next band down was Mr. Danny Dean.
Nice.
Aerosmith Rocks.
Hey, let me ask you really quick, because I wanted to ask before we go through this roster. Had
Yeah.
you made it across the border, bringing your bands over to the U.S. before that, Murray?
No, not
Okay,
at
so
all.
this was you primarily playing in Western Canada for the most part with those bands.
Yeah, Western
And
Canada. I mean, I was fairly new at the business. Like how I got involved was Donna, or DL Carr, that some of you know her. She had always wanted to do a heart tribute, and our second half of our our program today will let you know why we couldn't do it. And basically, I'll just say because I was in full, active addiction.
okay,
But we went to the P&E, where I saw Kevin
that's
2 years
right.
ago, flock of seagulls.
Great
And
show.
I think, hey, there's a picture right there.
That was it.
Yeah, so we went up to the P&E, and they had a karaoke thing happening with a radio station. And I said to her, "Why don't you go up and sing?" Right? And she's like, "No, it's fairly bashful." And then I go up and sing Straight On. So she went up and did Straight On, and it was just, by the end of the song, there was like had to be 200 or 300 people just going nuts. And I said, "We got to do this thing." So that's
Yeah.
where it started, and we just went to Facebook and just progressed from there. And first year, I think we had 12 shows all told, and then it's just progressed from there. So
Okay.
yeah.
I wondered how difficult, because as you both have found out, there are a lot of steps to take to get bands to be able to work and collect money across the border on both sides. So, so understanding that that was the pairing, Jason reached out to you and said, "Hey, Murray, you represent this Barracuda band. I want them to come down to Hairfest." So you mentioned getting a contract within an hour.
Yeah.
What differences did you have, Jason? Because you've worked primarily at that point with American bands, so you knew.
Yeah, I mean, like Murray was saying, for both of us, it was both our first experience. I've done international business before, but never in this capacity, and booking and all that. So it's been it's amazing like how much we've had to learn over the years, and both relying on folks to help us too, and it's been fascinating. Yeah.
I think a lot of people that come to these shows have no clue what goes into putting together the shows, first of all, but then thinking about work visas when you've got to deal with international work visas, right? So there's an additional expense that goes into bringing the band either way across the border. How did you put that into the contract, Jason? And how do you sort of justify being able to have that added expense in order to bring a band across?
Well, ultimately, I mean, first of all, and one of the reasons why I think things have gone so well with Murray and me is that in my position, besides the fact that Murray had, access, he's a really good identifier of talent. I mean, he was going to mention Aerosmith Rocks, Eagle Eyes, Night of Bowie, Badman Riders, and even some of the American bands. So I don't want to leave anybody out, but Murray has a really keen eye for talent. But the other thing too is that, my part of this is just I have to be able to go to a client and say, this band is exceptional, and we're spending the additional money to bring down from Canada, because the reality is that, I'll tell people there are two things. One, the Canadian bands tend to earn more, but the reason why they earn more is because their expenses are higher, and it's a 2-day commitment for one show. So, but the trade-off there is that what Murray does is, he enabled me to consolidate all of my activity through one person who really knows what's going on. And he'll tell you in a second what all he has to do to get a band down here, but it is a lot, and it's a moving target, especially nowadays. But it's always been, even the best of times, it's a moving target with our governments. So he was able to handle that. So it worked out both in terms of, for me as a U.S. promoter, for him handling all of that for all of the bands, but then vice versa, then becoming a resource for the bands up there, so that when they have trouble or need assistance getting their paperwork done, whenever Murray becomes it. So Murray can kind of speak to what it is he does, but for me, not having to do all the stuff he's about to tell you has been a godsend. And ultimately, the good news is that the bands are so good that, we don't get a big, pushback on having to pay a little extra and providing some lodgings in order to bring them in from out of town.
Cool. Yeah, Murray, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So what's happened is, when we started off, I knew nothing about going down to the U.S. Legally, as far as to work and play, but it's what's called a P2 visa. It's what a band has to have. And it's a fair amount of paperwork. The price ranges from, you know, 800 and something to, say, depending on the size of the band, 12, 1300 per P2 visa. It's like Jason said, it's like hitting a moving target, whereas you have to get a P2 visa. You get a P2 visa, you have to have contracts that are signed and booked shows, and that's it. Once you get the visa, you can add and subtract, which a lot of people didn't know at first. But luckily with me and the way me and Jason work is we can book out a year in advance, right? And of course, with the business, as we know, you know, the last two months, me and Jason have been canceling and postponing shows more than we've been booking. But what happens is with the P2, you get that, you go down, you stop at the border, they check you all out, they go through your stuff, they give you, it's called the I-94, which is a little white piece of paper that stamps into your passport, it connects to your passport, and then you go back and forth. Since we were the first band down there, we carry all our backline. Most of my bands, 90%, 95%, they carry their own backline. You know, it's just, that's how it is. So I have to get what's called a carnet, which is, you know, like a manifest for the gear, everything from serial numbers to what it's worth to replace. Because a lot of the fears of the Homeland Security is that either selling gear or buying gear down in the US and them not getting their worth, right?
Sure.
So that's another $1,000. And that's a year. So, you know, it started off one band, and last year I had 10 acts come across. So that's how paperwork that I used to do initially on my own, and I still do for some of the bands. It's a process where if you get a lawyer to do it, you're looking at least $700, $1,000. I charge $100.
Wow.
To do it, right? Because for me, it's done. I know it's done right. I got little folders on my desktop. Everybody's stuff is in there. When I say to Jason, these guys are good to go, they're good to go. I mean, we have a great communication that way where, you know, last year, probably around April or May, we were just in booking. It was nuts. It was like, you know, probably for me, I had over 150 shows in the US last year, and a total of, I think, 250, 60 shows total in Canada. So, you know, lots of work, lots of coordinating, you know, coordinating with the bands to make sure that they're, you know, I've got great people that I work with. You know, that's one of the things, you know, and Jason can attest to this, when they finish a gig, 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, what we hear is, man, yeah, they're good, but boy, those kids, they're so nice and they're so pro. And we just, you know, and it's true. And for me, how it works is I talk to the band leader. I put it on you know, when I'm working with Jason as a potential show, it goes on one calendar. Once it gets confirmed, it goes on a confirmed calendar. At one point last year, I had 56 calendars I was overseeing. So
a lot of management.
And then, you know, sometimes it'd be like, you know, one guy would go, you have the one calendar, and I go, what do you mean you're booked? You double booked, you got one calendar. But, you know, it is what it is. So, but that's the main part. Just for bands coming up that the 4 bands so far that I've had up here started off with Janice does a Janis Joplin out of Tacoma. Second coming of Janice, I tell you. The next band was from Seattle. I guess it was Hysteria, Def Leppard tribute. Yeah. And then third, one of my faves, Randy Hansen, who's
Hendrix.
been doing Jimi Hendrix for 35, 40 years. Hey, Kevin Filo, my buddy, his manager, great dude. So Randy came up and did Blue Frog Studios. I could tell you, and then last but not least, Kalimba, the Earth, Wind, and Fire. And they all started off playing at Blue Frog Studios. Hey, Blue Frog, Kelly, Juanita,
Nice.
Blue Crew, we love you. So, but there's no cost for the US bands to come to Canada. Very
That's it.
minimal. If you're over 30 days and over so many shows, then it costs you, but all they need is a signed contract. And if everybody has a clean record, there's no issues. I mean, there was one show one time I had to go down and basically babysit and get a guy through to do a show, and I was there for 6 hours. Doors open at 7. I got him to the gig at 6:30, but we went on.
And when you said babysit, that was somebody that maybe had something on the record that had some hangups at the border, or?
Yeah, and something, it was 30 something years ago.
Yeah, I mean,
and fairly minor, right?
I know they're very restrictive to things like gun charges and DUIs and drug charges, and a handful of bands that are in the 80s circuit that we play with, they've got a member or two that have had a DUI in their past and weren't able to make the gig. They got to customs and they said, nope, this is a 20-year-old DUI, but it's still on your record, and so we can't let you in. And they're at the last minute scramble to find a replacement drummer or keyboardist or whatever, and so I wondered how you were able to go down there and navigate and negotiate to get the person to the gig in time.
Well, what it comes down to is I basically had to pay a $2,000 guarantee, and that he would come back across the line. And also, the first question they go, how would this affect your business? And I go, got 2 sold out shows tonight for this band, and it will affect my business. I'm a small businessman. The venue also, it's going to be just horrific to have this happen. And really, the guy hasn't done anything in 30 something years. I mean, the only advice I can give to any musicians who are in this position before you're going to go across the border, just double check.
Yeah.
Get a criminal record check. And if you're at the border and they start asking you questions, just be honest and don't talk back.
Yeah,
because
it's sad that
these guys, it doesn't matter at any moment. That's it. They can ban you for up to 10 years.
Yeah,
and then you're done. So
yeah, that's good advice.
Jason, I think Jason's got. If you remember there was one Hair Fest a couple of years ago, and I told you our P2s didn't show up in time, and
yeah, we had to go to, I think it was Congressman Blumenauer's office, and we ended up getting an assist, actually. They somehow were able to expedite the whole thing, but I mean, we've had a few close calls, but at the end of the day, it's always come through. Whatever is needed to happen, it's happened. So, it's an imperfect business, so you got to be able to improvise.
That is a huge part of it too. You want to talk about some of those experiences that have kind of been last minute that you had to pull together for some of these bigger shows. And while you explain that, maybe I'll have Murray start with one of those. I just need to change my connection plugin here. So I'm going to let you speak, Murray. Talk about.
That was probably the only one that was really tight. There's always the issues of, and what a lot of people don't realize, a lot of the bands in Portland and Seattle, that's the areas they play. A lot of them don't do a lot of touring. There are some exceptions. I can think of Mark Thomas and his bands. They go a lot, back east or in the States, the Midwest, whatever. There's not a lot. You pretty well or can stay in your own home area and play. Up here for us in Canada, especially BC, unfortunately there really isn't a market, and that's the whole reason why I started to take the axe down to the US. I mean, an extra added bonus shirt costs some more, but the exchange, able to really pay the bands well, and the phenomenal gigs that are down there, just the experiences we've got, the people we meet. I want to send a shout out while we're just on this to my buddy Colleen Martin right there. Here's a prime example. Colleen, 6 years ago, started off as a fan, and then she started working with us, loading gear and stuff. And now she's my road manager when I can't go down, and for various reasons. She's my eyes and my ears, and we love her. And she's just one of the many, many people. I can name 2 dozen, 3 dozen people down in the J. Fell family mostly from Portland and now starting in Seattle, that really help us. And it's not like, oh man, these damn Canadians are coming down to take our gigs, because 9 times out of 10, the acts I'm bringing down, there isn't that tribute in that market, or Jason is not, ideal specifically, he's my US partner. So, and it's just the way it's always worked. So Colleen, I hope you're doing well. And but as far as, it's just been waiting at the border. Sometimes 6-7 hours, not so much anymore. With Barracuda, especially with the girls and stuff, they go by and it's like, oh, there's Barracuda, or they'll joke and they'll go to the guys, which one of you are Ann or Nancy, right? And we go through the same, another thing, we go through the same border stop. 176 at Cloverdale, the truck stop, the port of entry. It just makes it so much better when you're doing that, if you can. It's just in and out. And last year I looked at my carnet, we did 12 trips down. Some 1 or 2 days, some 2 weeks. So that's really no issues at the border, other than with us with a carnet, it's a bit of a hassle at first, but we get to go through the commercial line. Whereas if you just have a P2 visa, you got to stay in line with all the regular people. And in the summertime, boy, it's nuts. So most of my bands, I try to make it so they come down a day ahead of time.
You bet.
For the traffic, border, and they get a good rest, because the shows, last thing I want, none of us are spring chickens, and even the ones that are younger, it's like, you just can't do it. It's just so much run and gun. And we're pretty good at just, setting up on the fly and just going for it. Sometimes sound checks, no sound checks. I got to say, I work with, all my bands are super pro. They're just, I'm so proud of them all.
You should be. Yeah. Well, you run a tight ship. It's a good one. And the bands are all, and not only, great professionals, but they really do have the entertainment factor down. So let me just know before you, and I do want you to go through your roster. I was just going to ask you about the pairing then with Sterling Talent. Now, so talk about the combination there between Mur-Man Productions, J Fell, and what now is formed into the long-lasting Sterling Talent. Jason, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing's actually really convoluted to explain once we try to plot Murray's position on the chart, because he's everywhere. So, I mean, the easiest way to look at it is that, Murray's got Mur-Man in Canada, right? And anything that happens in Canada is going up through Mur-Man, right? Okay. And then the opposite is also true. When he's acting in the U.S., he's acting as a representative of either JFL Presents, when we're doing things because we work on shows as promoters, right, where we take on risk and have a variable payout. But then we've also always worked on fixed pay engagements. It's a huge part of our business. All of that work is now with Sterling Talent after I merged that portion of my business. So Murray in the U.S. reps both JFL Presents and Sterling Talent. In fact, I think, Murray, you have both business cards, I think, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
There's Becky.
Mur-Man. There's Becky.
Yeah.
Hey,
Becky. Sterling Talent.
So I've got a number of titles, and I'm just so very honored to be able to do it, man. Becky was our biggest fan with Barracuda when we came down, and she's just, it's so great, the three of us, how the partnership just started, this year, and then everything sort of melted down, but it's going to be really, really good. We've got a large, I guess, map or sections, a lot of people between us, a lot of connections, a lot of shows, and it's just growing every day. I mean, just quickly, before that, as of March 15th or 16th of this year, before the pandemic hit, I had already booked 220 shows. That's
incredible.
what I had booked. So
it's a good sign of things to come once things clear up a little bit. That vaccine happens and we're back to booking shows and attending shows. So let's talk about some of those shows. You were going through a little bit of your roster here. So we went through.
So quickly, and you guys jump in on your, interactions with any of these bands and what you've seen. Danny Dean, Aerosmith Rocks, the real deal, man.
Yep.
These guys, once again, not only great men, great people, but Danny has Steven Tyler nailed,
That's
and
true.
the rest of the guys are tight.
Yeah, I remember the first time seeing them at a hair fest, and Danny brings out the headdress that you've got there in the picture, and it's just the bravado and his performance. It's uncanny. He looks and acts so much like Tyler, and then can sing like It's so tight. That band's incredible. Yeah, you know, money well spent.
And then the next act, there they are, another band from the island. It's funny, at one point Jason said, what are they feeding you guys, or what's the water up there, you guys? Every time I'd say, look, I got another band for you. At first it was like, yeah, okay. Now he says to me, he goes, yeah, I don't, you know, of course he listens to it to be prudent, but I mean, he knows that, you know, I'm not going to send anything down, you know, that I don't love. But these guys, Eagle Eyes, you know, they, in the short time that they've been working with me and Jason, hey guys back there, they have just taken both countries by storm for the talent that comes out of those four guys.
I mean, you could do it, and again, you know, I mean, you're talking here with a guy who plays in a Journey tribute, so I'm saying all of this in due humility. I think, you know, sometimes with tribute bands, it's like there's a perfect storm of things, you know what I mean? And I think Eagle Eyes is, you know, about as close to that as you're going to find, because they somehow look the part, they sound the part, they play, they just, and the material, like the Eagles catalog is like, it just fits there right in the middle. I mean, if you like country, you like the Eagles. If you like pop, you like, okay, Eagles are such a universal band, and then they're nice guys, and they do this for a living, so they're available to travel. And it's just like, you know, so I mean, you know, I don't get into the business of comparing one band to another when it comes to skill level and stuff. But if you just look at it from a purely commercial standpoint, Eagle Eyes, you know, they're really, it's an exceptional combination of band and choice of band to cover and situation and representation. And Murray, it's like a lot of stuff just all kind of came together for that to work really well.
Fun.
Yeah, and the dedication of the band also, and with all the bands that come down, because it's a lot of strategic planning. It's not just like, okay, I'm playing this weekend, I'm going to drive 25 minutes to the club. You know, we do this months and months out. Like a lot of the times in November, December, we start booking for the next summer, and we'll have the summer wrapped up by January, February. So it's really good. And then the next band, these guys, Sil, hi Sandy, hi everybody. A Night of Bowie, unbelievable. Also, you know, I've known Sil for coming up to 35 years, and he started off back in the 80s doing David Bowie, and just once again, just shivers, just spot on.
Yep.
So, you know, we're planning, hopefully we can maybe touch on what maybe at the end of this, what we think the future is going to look like. But I think, you know, we had these guys booked out in Colorado, if I'm not correct. Was it?
Yeah, they were headlining the opening night of the Cover Rock Festival down in Colorado, and it was you know, it's a huge honor, you know, great gig, and yeah, we were really bummed to see that one get canceled. But you know what? You know, a lot of this stuff is just, you know, hopefully just being postponed a year. And so, you know, on the other side of this, there's some great bands ready to work.
That's right.
Yeah. And then next, these dudes, Moving in Stereo, also from the island. I forgot to mention that Sil is from the island also. A lot of talent over there. You look at these two guys, you know, the Rick and Benjamin, or the Rick O'Casey, he spot on also. Great bunch of guys. Jason knows a little bit even more because he took them on the road and did a couple of shows with them last year. And maybe Jason, you can jump in here and, you know.
Yeah, they were awesome, man. We had a great time with those guys. We did the two shows. We had the Knitting Factory in Spokane and then Spanish Ballroom together up there in Tacoma. And not, you know, super nice guys, but also like they really nail the cars. I mean, The interesting thing about the Cars catalog is that it's surprisingly deep.
Yeah.
Which was also an interesting. So yeah, it's always cool when we get as musicians, you get it too, Kev, because you get to go and do these big, 80s things with lots of different bands, and it's like anytime you get a chance to pair with a band that you haven't worked with before, it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely, love it.
Yeah. So they were just remarkable, and then a fairly new act that was next to come down. I guess last year was the first year. Yeah. Bad Moon Riders, tribute to CCR. Mike Kelly, the lead singer, right there.
Yeah.
John Fogerty, that vocal. Once again, a lot of these guys, especially Doug Grant, the drummer, and Randy Robinson, they started off in a band, a Bon Jovi tribute, 7-8 years ago. I think you might have known them, Kev, Blaze of Glory.
Oh, yeah.
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 So they were the one that sort of started the whole U.S. acts or Canadian bands going to the U.S. They took a different route. They did a lot of back east stuff, and they did a lot of stuff down south. I looked at that and went, "That's great, but why can't we just go up and down the I-5?"
Yeah, sure.
So that's what we've done. But this band here, dedication last year out of their own pocket, pretty well with a little bit of help from Sterling Talent. Went down to Reno, did a showcase. Really good response. Just the guys are right on top of it when it comes to social media, which something, maybe Jason, we can talk about as far as that too, where that's such an important part, getting the gig, sure, and playing it, but making sure that you're connected all the way before and after, not just having dead Facebook pages. But these guys, once again, a bunch of great guys and also very, very talented. And then this band here, you can see, there's my little honey behind me, Donna, DL Carr. This is the same band as Barracuda with additions to on keyboards and many other instruments, Daryl A. Bear.
Okay.
Unbelievable the response we got for this show, just starting off. I think I put a video of different drum, the Stone Ponies tune, got over 56,000 views, and I didn't do anything to it. So, getting back to, we can come down and do a Barracuda show with the classic Ronstadt. We can do no matter 3 or 4 different combinations, which, something that, when Jason has a client or I have a client that has a limited budget but wants to get the best bang for the buck, we can do 4 or 5 hours in a night switching shows, and they're all very good shows done properly. Wardrobe, it's not just like someone throwing on a bunch of hats, different hats. Hey, we're doing this and that. It's done right. So classic Ronstadt is fairly new, but really, really great timing. Linda Ronstadt, 100 million albums sold, never wrote a song, right? And so, I don't know. I don't think we've only done a few shows down in the U.S. A lot of the stuff in Oregon, but we've done a lot in Seattle, Bates Place. Hey, everybody to Bates Place in Bellevue. And then lastly, but not least for these guys, it's a 4-piece, now 5-piece with Mr. Billy Mendoza. We do have an American in the band, Billy Mendoza from Hawaii. He's not in this picture because I didn't get time to do the new ones, but this is a 4-piece band called Strut, which does top 40, rock and roll, dance. It's something that we can do a tribute, like Jason say, hey, I got these guys can do tribute shows, and at the end of the night do a dance.
Yeah, that's
dance set.
Covering all the bases.
Yeah,
I do think there's actually an interesting, there's a little bit of a lesson that comes with some we've noticed with these bands, and it really pays dividends for Barracuda because they have all these different permutations, and for tribute bands, a lot of what limits a band is because it's one artist, and you have a radius. If you're going to get a gig one night, you can't play Portland 2 nights in a row with the same band, for example. Right. But you can do Ronstadt one night and a Heart tribute the other night. They're totally different. And so something that, especially when you're traveling and trying to having more routing opportunities along the way. The bands that kind of have sort of the 2-in-1s with 2 different shows, that flexibility they tend to get more work. So.
Sure.
Speaking of 2-in-1.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coming up here, these guys here, Outlaw Country, Waylon Jennings and Johnny Cash tribute. It once again, Dave Patet, the singer, does both here, and his band. Great people to work with, and from Vancouver Island, I tell you, just on and on and on. But closest thing I've seen to Johnny Cash, and he does a great Waylon. We just did a show a little while back at Bake's Place, and for an extra added thing, Donna from Barracuda and the others went up and did June Carter Cash.
Nice.
And it went over really well, man. I got to say, she is a multi-talented, facet person. So these guys just started to come down. They did, what's the show that we talked about it yesterday, Kev?
Yeah, Dante's. It looks like
Dante's.
that's the back. That looks like the background of Dante's right there in the picture.
I think it's in Canada.
Oh, okay. They
Yeah,
all look.
but,
they all look the same.
Jason, can you jump in on what the reaction from the Dante's people were and everything?
Yeah, I mean, Mike D who had booked it was like, dude, this guy's the best Cash tribute I've seen play. I mean, and they've had tons of them.
They have.
And we actually, I mean, those guys, we were talking about Bowie having a great headlining gig down here, and Outlaw was gonna headline the Bite of Bend headliner. You know what I mean? And that was one of the gigs that got canceled. So we were kind of just getting things going with them too.
So that takes care of all the bands that have actually physically come down and played in the U.S. For Jason and myself. I've got a few bands here that were booked and ready to go. This band, Moondance, Van Morrison's called the Van Morrison Songbook. I wasn't a real big fan of Van Morrison, and I didn't realize how many hits the guy had.
Sure. This
band is phenomenal also. And for you that might know the band Tiller's Folly, very, very well-respected, high-end Celtic band out of Vancouver, been around for years. They are this band. So once again, for example, Bake's Place, Friday night, Tiller's Folly does Friday night. They stay set up. They do Moondance on Saturday.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, really trying to make it so the bands, because of the travel, we want everybody to get good rest, get as much playing time and money. Let's just be honest. You've got to pay the bills. So it works out really, really well. So they've rebooked again, and we'll be getting them down. And then this gentleman here, who I've known off and on for years, Paul Kipe, Texas Flood, which is Stevie Ray Vaughan. And, I had a show booked in September up here at the Highwayman Saloon on the island. Hi, guys. A great venue with Paul and Randy Hansen together.
Wow.
And then also on top of that, David Gogo from Vancouver Island, who's another gunslinger of a player. So we've got lots of good plans for this guy, Paul Kipe. His drummer, Jerry Adolph. I don't know if you know him, Kev. He's a drummer for Bill Henderson Chilliwack, also Jim Burns, a bunch of other ones. So that's the, and I've always working on something, but these are the last few bands that we just started to get into the fold when everything happened. So, and I'll just shortly go with the bands that I bring up. And once again, she is. Like, look at that. It's Sherry, Janice Levs.
Nice.
Phenomenal. Hysteria. There's a singer behind me here. Really, really top notch. Great reviews for them. They went up to Port Alberni and did the Fantastic Festival up there. Same weekend as Trooper. And it was great. And then what can you say about this guy?
Yeah.
I mean,
Legend.
Yeah.
Legend, man.
That's the truth.
And just such a great person. And his whole band, and Kevin, my buddy. That's the other thing where I phoned Jason. Jason hadn't booked Randy. Randy is weird. Hadn't played in Portland for 7-8 years, Jason?
Long time.
Like that. Yeah, long time. So I start working with him. I go, hey, Randy Hansen, let's see how it goes. So we booked the Aladdin with Randy headlining, Jimi Hendrix, and the Janis Joplin, Janis Lives. What a show. What
Wow.
a show. I still hear people raving about it. And then they went out to Spanish Ballroom and did the same thing. So those guys, a lot of great things. Randy's a lot of time in Europe, but it doesn't seem now that he had a tour planned, and because of the no flies zone, he's had to cancel that. So, and then what can you say about these guys also? Kalimba, tribute to Earth, Wind, and Fire. This is a band that Becky, I think, turned on to both Jason and myself. First Jason, then me, and I brought them up for a few shows at Blue Frog, and then in White Rock in the city, Five Corners. You never, 3,000-4,000 people just dancing. It's funny at Blue Frog. It's not a venue where people dance, but Kelly, the owner, hi Kelly, Juanita, phoned me and says there's just no way people could not sit down. They just stood in one spot and danced, man. So that's the majority of the bands that I work with. They're other bands, but these are the guys that we've been partnered up with, and the ones, not only do they play well, but they're great people. They handle their business really well, which me and Jason don't have time to, for lack of better words, babysit.
Sure. No, absolutely. I think the interesting thing about this right now is that a lot of some of these bands have been trying to do something online. It's difficult when people are living in different places to do some sort of virtual concert. But if somebody wanted to support these bands, they've seen one of those tribute bands and they want to support them and maybe help sustain a little bit of their living while we wait this pandemic out. How do they get a hold of those bands? Maybe buy merchandise, or maybe, get collectibles or anything from those bands. Can they go through one of your websites to find them?
Canadian bands, yes. I even have the American bands. Jason has them also. If you remember the name, just Google the name. The streaming aspect is something that I've been working on, and I've run some ideas past Jason, and I'm working on something. For example, a couple weeks ago or a month ago, we started working on a show where in Calgary, Alberta, there's a guy that owned 2 hotels, sort of horseshoe with a pool in the middle. We worked together. He was going to, in fact, they're doing shows today, but not with our bands, but they, block off, cover the pool, have the band down, and then people rent rooms that are on the balcony. It sort of got bogged down for us, and financially they went with local bands. Makes sense.
Sure.
But that happened. The other is with Blue Frog Studios, who has not only a great live venue in White Rock, but they have the technology and the crew just nailed down for live streaming shows, which are just, it's like being there. You're sitting, and Pat Glover, one of the top-notch studio guys and sound guys in Vancouver for years, mixed Heart, or did work with Heart in the studio and that, and a bunch of different acts. So what happens there is I'm trying to work so we get a lineup of bands, or one band that does 2 or 3 shows, and then go to restaurants, pubs, even a drive-in for a base rate, sell them the show. And then all they do, they get a code. All they need is a screen and a sound system, and they're in.
Nice.
For example, the Stones this weekend. The Stones are re-releasing the show they did in Cuba, I believe.
Wow.
300, 400 drive-ins. Like, they need the money.
Yeah, right.
Like, so anyways, but there's a lot of different opportunities. But the thing is to be able to do it right, and to be able to make sure that when something goes on the air, no matter how many people see it, the last thing you want is not the best quality that you can do, right? So, but
I know that Bobby Pilata here in the Portland area too. I know that he's got his Northwest Talent Showcase, and he, I noticed that he just announced that he's got a whole bunch of new gear that he's putting in place, so that when he comes back from a short reprieve over our holiday weekend, that he's going to be launched with some new audio and video, which would be great to see. But
those guys do a really solid job.
Yeah, they do for sure. I think mostly for these bands that aren't able to play, if somebody wanted to buy a Hysteria tribute shirt or a Stone in Love face mask, anything like that, they can go to. Are they able to go to get any merchandise from jfell.com or Mur-Man Productions?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to. I mean, Murray's bands are a little bit unique, I would say. So I'm not going to speak for them and what makes sense up there. But, most of the bands here don't, merch isn't really what we really need is to keep the venues around. I keep coming back to that. But
yeah, we do,
really
but that's good.
The best way to support a tribute band, for example, right, or cover band, is to find a way to support the venues that they play at, because that's ultimately, if we're looking long term,
Mm-hmm.
that's really what we have to save, or there isn't going to be anything to come back to.
And you and I we're going to get that ensemble together. We're going to get the venues
Yes.
and the coalitions together so that we can talk about best ways to support that. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think.
Sorry, Kev.
No, it's okay.
Vancouver, Washington, Billy Blues Bar and Grill.
Great example.
What a team! What a team! What Bill and his wife and those guys are just outstanding on what they're doing, helping musicians. And I got to say, all the bands that I bring down and we play there, it's just, once again, it's one of the highlight gigs of the weekend when we go down. But there's lots. Bake's Place in Bellevue. Those guys really treat the bands well, top notch. It's a great gig. They just opened up the patios last week. Things have changed a little bit, but they're still able to, do that. So, but as far as bringing people inside with bands and that, who knows when that's going to change. And
sure.
I just heard last night that our government is seriously looking at keeping the border closed for at least a year.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's do our part and making sure that we follow the scientists' recommendations and keep the virus contained.
Right here.
That's right. I think I love the fact that we were able to talk a little bit about the unification and the bringing together the countries and bands that across the border. That'll happen again for sure.
Yeah.
In the meantime, we get to just collaborate and plan, right? You guys have a lot of plans for 2021, I think. And I know a lot of people are excited about it. I saw the thread that started here, people asking again about Hairfest 2021. And I would bet that that one's going to come off with a bang, even better than before. So maybe, Jason, I would imagine that you're probably inundated with suggestions and recommendations and requests from all these people about what to do for the next year. And even if it has to be a drive-in concert, who knows? I think it'll be something special. So I really want to thank you, Jason, for representing that partnership here in this conversation.
Yeah.
It means a lot to me. I've raced across the country many a time to get back to some of your events and just to walk on stage in time for the gigs. And for me, I love the community aspect of it. It has become a family, both with the patrons that come to the shows and the bands that are playing there. It's one huge reunion, and my favorite part about the local community. So
it's going to be so cool when we finally get to do it again. That's the thing I keep going back to. It's like, man, it's so it's like, we'll get past it. We'll do what we got to do. We'll get past it. Murray and I are still working, and Becky and I, and everybody's working behind the scenes. Everyone's trying to stay alive, keep things going. So it's like, you know what, man? We're going to be here when it comes back. And so,
Yeah. And
I'm glad to participate in the conversation. Murray is one of my favorite people in the world. And really one of the toughest dudes I know. And I know you guys are going to get into a little bit of his background stuff here. So I'm going to jump off and let you guys chat it up, but appreciate being a part of it. And I'm definitely encourage everybody to stick around and hear this next part of the conversation. I think you're going to be pretty blown away with what is going to get talked about here.
Right on. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Once again, Jason gave me a compliment. I guess my best attribute is, and hopefully still will be, is getting talent and looking and being able to cultivate and get a working relationship. But what I've learned the most from Jason is the business part, especially the social media, all the promotional ways, and even just like if I have a question, issue, problem, either with the venue or band, what have you, I phone him and talk, and he 99% of the time, or probably 100% of the time, he's got the answer I need to hear, right?
Yeah.
And what all that does is just strengthens us even more. And just quickly before he leaves, the first time I saw his bands were you did that tribute shows with Jennifer Batten at the downtown.
Oh, Roseland. It was I think Kev. I think you played at that one too.
Yeah,
It was the
Kevin did.
Six Packs Live with Steel Horse.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Appetite for Deception played, and Shoot to Thrill, one from Many, and Stone in Love,
Right.
and Jukebox Heroes. Yeah, at the Roseland.
And Jennifer Batten was there.
Yep,
Unbelievable.
that's right.
So he didn't know this. My band, Barracuda, were up in Whitehorse. I drove down, bought a ticket, came in, and just sat incognito. It's how I do with most of the bands that I work with too. I go see them unannounced, but went down there and just saw how, because I'm going to go into business with this guy in another country. I want to see what's going on. So I'm down there, and it's like, it was just unbelievable, just right from that moment, how it blended. And I go downstairs to the dressing room, and I think he had brought in a vocal coach.
Yeah, Eugene was there. We had a vocal coach to warm up the singers. Yeah.
Warming up the singers. I'm like, what? So anyways, that's how it pretty well all started from then. And, even with you, Kev, you sat in with us one show when Curtis couldn't make it, and, gotten really, really tight. But we got a lot of stuff in the works, and hopefully I think between me and Jason, the amount of shows, probably 85% of the shows that we had booked for this year have been postponed to next year.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of hanging on.
Yeah, well, you just got more. You got more time to plan. So Jason, thank you really for everything. You and I will be we'll get those details together to get the Independent Music Coalition together. And
we'll look forward to talking about that.
That's going to be a good one, because we want everybody to make sure that they support those bands.
For sure. All right, fellas.
Happy Canada Day to you.
Yep. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jace.
Later.
All right, folks. Well, hey, before we jump into this next conversation, I just want to let you know that I mentioned many facets that my guest, Murray Mcvay, has. He is not only a booking agent and manager for many bands, but he's also a recovery counselor with a new organization called Your-NewLife-Recovery Center. So it's an important organization that really focuses on finding a new way to live without the unfortunate sort of influence of drugs and alcohol. The music industry is rife with it, and something that's been a part of any musician's life at some point or another, whether you were a participant or had to witness maybe some of the outcomes of what drugs and alcohol might be doing to your environment. So I would love to have Murray talk a little bit about the creation of Your-NewLife-Recovery organization, and then maybe talk about your own recovery story.
Hey, thank you, Kev. Let me take these off because it's just blind everybody. For me, I think I'll do the opposite. I'll just go from my story to where I came to the point where I was able to help others. And first and foremost, I was addicted drugs, alcohol, and violence for over 30-something years. And I'm third generation alcoholic. My dad, bless his soul, he passed away. He had 12 years of sobriety, but the afflictions of the alcohol shut his body down. This is how crazy my side of the family with my dad's side of the family was. My great-grandfather, well, it goes back 4th generations, I guess. So my great-great-grandfather for World War I was supposed to go to war. He was going to go to war, and he went to go drinking. And my great-great-grandmother said to my grandfather, "Hey, go get your dad, bring him back home, want to have supper or whatever." What happens is my grandfather goes, they both got drunk and both left and joined the army. So, it's just, that's the craziness of how, that happened. But, I was able to, along with the addiction, which a big part of the trauma is usually a childhood, something that happens in your childhood. And for me, it was being sexually abused when I was 6. And that really just took me off to one side. I was lost. I was hurt. I was just the most timid, shyest little guy. But I started off, I think by the age of about 11 or 12, I was already smoking pot, drinking. I did my first intravenous drug by the time I was 15, I believe. And, just went on and on and on and on. And then, of course, I used to be at one point, I started in this business, the entertainment business, as a singer. Not a very good one, but did it until my voice changed, and that was it. Then I started to do sound. I was considered one of the better sound techs up here. Did that for many years, so it was just sex, drugs, rock and roll, over and over and over for many, many years. A funny story. It's funny now, but not at the time. I was playing with a band at Scott's Fade to Rock in Surrey, and the road manager at the time for Bryan Adams, Joe Jackson, I think it was, came out to see the band. The band was called Army, and I was mixing, and they had come out to listen to my mix because there's a possibility that they wanted me to go out with Bryan.
Okay.
Well, I was probably 3 sheets to the wind. I had somebody put a drink on my soundboard. I asked him to move it. He didn't move it. Then he was yelling at me to tell me to turn it down. And then I just laid back and hit him, knocked him out. Said, "How's that? Can you hear the music now?" And then that was it. I talked to Joe, and he says, "Yeah, you're a great sound man, but we can't take that chance, man.
Right.
You're haywire." So, I could have possibly been Bryan Adams' sound man, but a good friend of mine back then, Jody Pfeiffer, he got the gig, and he's still with Bryan.
Good.
As it turned out, I'm so happy that I am where I am. A lot of that goes to just to speed up, and this is a weird transition. So years and years, I went in and out of treatment centers, 28 spin dry, 28 days, 7 days to start with, and 28 days. Well, I had an addiction doctor called Dr. Coleman in New Westminster, really hard-nosed guy, great guy in recovery himself. He'd say, Murray, it takes 28 days to stop lying. It takes 28 days to detox. So what have you got when you leave? Or no, 30 days to get sober, 30 days to stop lying. So what happens when you do 28 days? I go, -2. He goes, exactly. And it happened. It was just revolving. And about that time, me and Donna, my beautiful wife, I'll just right there, the black hair.
Yeah.
She, we were still together, and she had just gone through so much for me, and and she stuck it out. She knew I had a good heart. The one thing that I always knew, I was an addict.
Yeah.
I never denied it. I just didn't know the right tool or access or path to get clean and sober. So it just got worse and worse, to the point where Donna was singing with a band, Legends of Rock and Roll, Roy Orbison and Buddy Holly and that. And they went to England for a tour. And when she came home, everything was in the pawn shop. Car was smashed up. I was smashed up, luckily not in jail. But so it got to the point where that was it. She had enough.
Okay.
And so I left the house, and I went down to the downtown east side. I don't know if a lot of you guys down in Portland know that. Basically, it's 3 blocks radius, 4 block radius. I know, Kev, you've seen it.
Hastings.
Hastings in Maine. It's the highest population of intravenous drug use in North America.
Yeah.
In fact, right now, to this day, we have our own pandemic other than the other one where 17 people average are dying every day in that 3-block
My
radius.
God.
17 people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And very sad because what's happening with the border shut down, there's not as many drugs coming in. So the drug dealers, they're cutting it with whatever they can to make it last.
Yeah.
So I left, went down there and was living down there for a short time, scrounging around on the street, staying at the Waldorf. And then I went to go see a friend of mine and a guy that I've known since I was little. I'll just call him Bobby G. He's the manager of the Drake Hotel. He's also was a member of a local motorcycle club with the initials HA.
Mm-hmm.
Did I just say that? Yeah. But
You sure you want to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's cool. I used to do some collections for him down on Main Street, the American Hotel, Cobalt, places like that, the Princess. And so I would go back to the Drake, or before that, the Admiral, or after that, the Admiral, and trade wares. And one day, that day, he came up to me and he poked me in the chest a few times. And he goes, you're weak. You're weak. And he goes, but I love you. And he says, you got to go to treatment, buddy. You got to get help, or you're going to get our help. And the help that he went like that to his head, you're going to get our help. Well, the Drake Hotel is 2 blocks from Union Gospel Mission. And I walked up to Union Gospel Mission and I went in and I wrote the application. There was 4 beds. I got the 3rd bed, and I phoned Donna and I said, Donna, I'm going to Union Gospel Mission for treatment in-house. It's going to be 4 months. It was supposed to be, but I stayed a little longer. And she just basically screamed out, thank you, God, hallelujah, whatever it was.
Wow.
And then I went there and, I did everything that was asked of me. We had a tough drill sergeant of a guy, Terry Dumont, who passed away of cancer, and he was in charge of the chores. And the first chore he gave me, hands me a brush and says, you're cleaning toilets.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. And what I learned there was no matter if I was cleaning toilets or cleaning the library or wherever it was, I found some pride and I found some purpose. Sure. And it got to the point where can I clean the toilets? It was just, I was done. I was done at this time. And I had the spiritual connection with my higher power. It was a while later on, we were at a place called Rivendell in Bowen Island with another good friend of mine, Wally, who was my mentor. And he just shared with me his tale of his coming to Christ. And it was done, man. That was it. I just felt the weight coming off my shoulders, and just, yeah. So I started my walk, and I've just continued on. I worked for Union Gospel Mission for a while, and then of course 9 times out of 10, every person that goes to treatment, they all want to be addiction counselors. Yeah. And I think where that stems from is we're hurting for so long, and then once we feel that the hurt's not there anymore and we're healing and we've got this big heart and we just want to share it with others. Yeah. Right. And so my counselor, Barb, said to me, Murray, 2 years, go 2 years, be sober for 2 years, and then look at it. Along with that, and Dr. Coleman, who I was seeing regularly, he says, you have dual diagnosis, and which was basically I have bipolar, but for all these years I was self-medicating. So, sure. There's so many misdiagnoses with people that go to a GP or someone who's not a specialist in that field of addiction, and they get misprescribed doses of medication or misdiagnosed, and that can sometimes be worse because it does lead to suicide, violence, but I got sober for 2 years, and then I worked at Union Gospel Mission, and then I went to school, and I went for, I guess it was just over a year and a half, and I ended up getting 96% average and graduated, and was certified as a addiction counselor.
Wow.
Hadn't been to school forever, Kev.
Yeah.
I mean, just
not formal education, but you had the education
yeah, I
of
did.
streets.
Yeah, as they said, research, a lot of
Yeah.
research.
Right. Yeah.
And just sort of my story goes back and forth, but it does make sense. With that, I was a really good, I know I was a good sound man. I still am. I don't get to do it very often, but it's still the best part that I love about the business. But so many times I would get into conflicts, physical, what have you, and I lost a lot of good gigs, right? I lost the respect of a lot of people. I didn't take it serious. The business, it's the business, the music business, not, play.
Right.
And so I lost that opportunity, right? And to be able to go from there to, going to school. And when I went to school, it wasn't so much, it was funny. Some of my friends go, "Oh, you're going to school for drug counselor. Oh, you've done every drug and you'll be great."
Right.
Sorry, it ain't that.
Right.
It's about you learning the human psyche, right? And what I learned was most about myself.
Sure.
Right? Forgiveness.
Yeah.
So partially for me, it was the spiritual part and learning about the addiction itself. I do an exercise with a lot of my clients. I work strictly with males. I can't, it's just not really a good thing to male, female,
Yeah.
just for a whole bunch of reasons. But I do an exercise with a timeline and get a whiteboard, put a line across the middle, and then anything positive in someone's life goes on top of the line, anything negative goes on the bottom. And I'll tell you, Kev, I can, within 10, 15 minutes, I can pretty well circle and pinpoint where that person lost his way, or his way. And
you can identify the source of the pain, the source of
Yeah.
where they're essentially the beginning of their bottom.
Yeah, and the trauma, right?
Okay.
Where the trauma starts. So what happens then is, with a lot of men, especially younger men, that don't know why they're like this and why they got loaded and why they do the things they do over and over and over, which is, insanity. And once that they find that and you can hold on to that and get a piece of that, it's great. Coleman would say to me, when I first met him, I go, well, I was sexually abused, and this is what happened, and poor woe was me, still feeling. And he goes, so you're, how old are you? I go, I'm 40. Well, I can't remember, 46 at the time. He goes, when did this happen? When I was 6. Get over it. That's how he was. Tough love, man.
Right.
Just get over it, man. And move on, because so many of us stick in the past and try to would've, could've, should've, or on the other hand, when we get clean and sober, we try too fast to make up for what the past has been, instead of just taking care of ourselves first. So I went to school, and then I worked at 2 or 3 different treatment places. One out in Chilliwack in this valley. It was basically for men who were waiting trial, and they would be able to, if they promised to go to treatment, they would be able to go there instead of sitting in jail. And it was really, really great at first. And I had a pretty high workload of, I think it was 12 clients, and I would see them daily and do one-on-ones and teach class. The way, for me, I find visually, I do a lot of visual stuff when I do my teachings, because it's just visually, it's easier for people to intake.
Sure.
Right. And a lot of different movies. I work a lot with musicians and have in the past, and I've got a whole bunch of videos of musicians in recovery. It would have been nice if we could have played that video today, but Joe Walsh wrote a song called One Day at a Time. And if you go to my website, it's on there. And what I did, I edited it with musicians, male and female, who are in recovery now and who have publicly come out and said they're in recovery and they're fine with people knowing that. I'm not breaking any rules. And it's quite uplifting to see. I mean, Alice Cooper, 37 years. Actually, I heard him on the phone, on the radio the other day. And it was just great, right? He was just an amazing dude, man.
Yeah,
And,
for sure.
it goes all over the place.
We'll put that video, a link to the video, in the
Yeah.
archive of this too, because it's
great.
You did a phenomenal job on it for sure, and I want people to be able to see it. One of the things that I really love about hearing your story and being able to have you share a little bit about your path to recovery is that it's a common thing. You know, it really is a prevalent thing right now with this pandemic, even more so. You know, people are really struggling with the way to cope with the uncertainties in the world, you know, all the stuff that's out of control right now. And so there are people that turn to drugs and alcohol that maybe they hadn't before. And if they already had a problem where their life was out of control, it's becoming exponentially so. And so hearing you share your story and talk about that vulnerability, you know, and this progress, it's important for people to hear this because so many people are feeling it at the same time. When you talk about using these visual aids, and you work a lot with musicians, quite a few musicians end up listening to this show. And I think it's encouraging for them to know that somebody that they look up to and see in the industry that's been there for a while has at least some strategies. And so, so tell me about that as you talked about this program. So how did Your New Life then show up in your world?
Well, I had a company before. It was just Mur-Man counseling, and I had pretty well split the time up doing interventions and doing what's called sober coach, being a sober coach for people, and a few musicians, and not to the point where I didn't get where, say for example, and once again, this is public knowledge, Aerosmith, when they go out, I still think to this day, Steven Tyler has a sober coach that goes with them, right? So it's like a lot of the Christian acts, they have a pastor that goes out with them.
Sure.
Right? Get that
sort of spiritual guide. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I did that for a while. I did it, one case I can remember was a young guy that I won't get any more specific, but he was in a band and we did an intervention for him, and his family was there. And after the intervention, he accepted to get some help. So I went to a hotel room with him for 4 days, and he detoxed with me. And then I started to bring him along to introduce what a sober coach does. A lot of it is, okay, the past, what you did before, you're hanging out in bars, you're hanging out with the wrong people. We're going to go to meetings. We're going to get you on a pathway of eating better. Don't use me as an example on that, but just starting to do feel good things, right? Do positive things. And after a couple of weeks, he just said, Maria, I'm not going to do hard drugs anymore. I'm not going to drink alcohol or liquor. But he says, I'm going to smoke pot and I'm going to drink beer. And I just said, man, it doesn't work. As addicts, it's a light switch, right? And our switch is broken. Mm-hmm. I can't turn this switch on. Once that's on, that's it, man. I'm done. Even with 18 years clean, right now, I know if I had a near beer every day for a week, the next thing would be a real beer.
Game over. Yeah.
Game over.
I'm glad that you talked
for me.
Well, sure. And, I mean, if you look at statistics and you look at the research, it shows that again and again, that is the process that takes most people out of into relapse. They think, I can handle it on the weekends, or I can have just one. I can just take a hit and I'll be fine. But I know that a lot of people that recognize that there's a problem in their life with drugs or alcohol, but they're afraid that they're going to have to give up everything that was good in their life in order to go through recovery. Right. So, like I know you've heard this many times, right? A musician that's like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to play in bars anymore because I'm not going to be able to be around it, or all the fun that I had is no longer going to be there. Give
my
up.
life, yeah.
Right.
Sorry, my life's going to be so boring.
Yeah. Yeah. And so tell me about that conversation you have with people as a sober coach. I come in as a drummer and I say, hey man, my life has become unmanageable, like my kids won't talk to me. My wife, just doesn't want to see me and lock me out of my house. My band doesn't want me to be there because I can't, I can't stay sober around the gig. So I need to make a change, but I don't want to cut out everything in my life. What do I do?
Well, cutting out and changing things, two different, but it's a matter of the commitment first. It has to be that step one. Yeah, admit I am powerless over the drugs and alcohol. Once that is at least acknowledged, that's the big, I know so many people that go from they want to go to step 12, which is to give back and help others. Well, the steps are done in an order. They start at 1, they end at 12. If you don't get step 1, it's not going to happen. So if the willingness is there and I'm working with someone, one of the tests is, okay, first test, here's my card, phone me every morning at 8 a.m. Next day, nothing. And my job is not to chase, especially if I'm even as a sober coach being hired, the ground rules are, I'll be here for you and to help you walk along the path, but I'm not going to pick you up and carry you, right? I'm just not going to do that because it doesn't work. I tried that method. It don't work. So once someone is committed to working with me, then it's a matter of you go back into time and once you get in the timeline and you go, what did you like to do when you were a kid? I like to fish. Hey, okay, let's go fishing. I like that. What brings back the memories that tears start to come out of joy? That's what you connect with. And with music, it's so easy that way. That's why 99% of us are in the business, is because we love the music, right? And it takes us back to when certain times in our life. And it doesn't have to be a stupor, drunken night of debauchery and, just sitting at home, being able to learn some songs or whatever. Thank God for this technology right now, Kev.
Yeah.
I mean, virtual meetings, bands being able to do some stuff, streaming, rehearsing, what have you. It's really, really good because, the old days, the old timers would say to me, I go to a meeting and it's just like, take the cotton out of your mouth or take the cotton out of your ears and stick it in your mouth.
Right.
Like shut up and listen.
Yeah.
So basically it's trying to fill the voids, but in a regimented way where everything for me specifically, I have to have a set sort of plan, and it's taken me a lot. You can talk to Donna. I'm bipolar. I take my meds, but still, when this thing hit at first, like here I am, 220 something shows booked. It's thousands of dollars a month just to carry our house and our expenses for the business. Thankfully, our government stepped up right away. And I'm not going to get into politics, but they did a good job. There's some backlashes happening as far as money that needs to be recovered. But the important thing is they got the money in the people's hands right away.
Right.
And so I was able to get that stress level down and do what I could. Living life on life's terms. That's probably the number one saying that I have even to this day. It's just living life on life's terms, because I can't change what's happening outside these four walls, other than for me and Donna, we do what we have to stay safe, not get this, the disease again. I got tested the other day. I'm fine now. I'm going through other health issues, been going on for years and years, but but I can do it now, right? I can do it without getting loaded, but I still have things I have to work on a daily basis, like my weight, got up to 300 pounds. I just started working with a trainer, a little bit, half hour each day, just a little bit at a time, a little bit of a progress at a time, instead of, I found with myself and a lot of guys that I work with is I want it back. I want it all now. I want,
Yeah, sure.
like for me, the
Instant.
30 years, I look at it like a pendulum, right? I was in addiction for 33 years. I'm 18 years clean. I'm still nowhere near, uh,
Sure.
and it's true. Where your addiction starts is where your mental, I'm going to say me. I have to keep saying me because I'm going to get some private messages saying, oh, speak for yourself. So I am.
Sure.
For me, my personality, my growth stopped at like 12, right?
Yeah.
And so now I'm like 20 years old, 21 years old
Y-
in my mind,
Sure.
right? Does that make
It
sense?
totally does. Yeah. No. If you also think about what, when you found the source of your pain at 6 years old, you think about parts of you being still that infantile state. Um, One of the things you mentioned in somebody that had an impact on your recovery, when your buddy gave you some tough love and said, get over it. It's been 40
Yeah,
years. One thing that I've noticed in my personal experience is that people close to me had childhood trauma who did have, like, say, family members that said they swept it under the rug and they said, it happened in the past. Let's sweep it under the rug. You can move on with your life. And I know there's two different things there, right? I mean, if you don't have some sort of therapy and work to be able to resolve that, it's going to manifest itself in some really toxic and negative ways if you don't learn to deal with it properly. And it's not just drugs and alcohol, it's anything else, whether it be
well, violence for me, it was violence,
sure, you
right?
bet. I mean, yeah.
I would
And
get amped up, man.
yeah,
Not so much even hitting somebody.
sure.
If I got hit, it'd be like when I was a bouncer for years and years at the Caribou and stuff. People go, "Don't mess with him. Don't get him going. Right?
Yeah,
Don't poke the bear,"
sure.
because it would be like game on.
Yeah. Well, so you've got a whole series of things to handle to work on your recovery. I would think that a lot of people probably have questions about your methods. How do you deal with this in sort of a ritualistic way on a daily basis? Do you have rituals or a process that you go through to kind of get yourself right in the daytime?
Well, where I am now, and I'll be honest, I haven't been to a meeting in a long time, even
Yeah.
way before this pandemic hit, and I haven't been to church in a long time, and I haven't been doing my step work in a long time. And that's not a good thing, even whatever, how, 5 years in recovery is considered a newbie still.
Sure.
Right?
Yep.
So coming 18 years, but what a friend of mine, Wes, I'll tell you a quick story about me and him. Um, when we were kids, we were in a little apartment in New Westminster, um, doing intravenous drugs, and we used to do what was called stereo and quad, which would be both arms and both legs. 15, right?
Hmm.
We went to school together. We sort of drifted off. About 18 and a half years ago, I was at a meeting as a greeter. All of a sudden, this guy comes in and, Wes, is that you? Yeah. Holy shit, give each other a hug. And he he went to treatment. I had just gotten out of treatment. Then I relapsed again because it was one of these 28-day things. So he went to a long-term treatment. I think it was 9 to 12 months. Then we reconnected again about a year later. And now for the next 18 years, here we are. We've known each other since we were 15. And we're both in long-term recovery. And he always says to me, he's probably my best sounding board and best, other than Donna, and I can get into that part as far as that. But he just says, Murray, you're Mur-Man. He goes, you're living your program. You're living the steps,
Mm.
right? It
Yeah.
doesn't mean I do need to still keep that in my life, physically doing them, going to meetings. That's something that I honestly have just not been really, really good at doing. Lots of excuses, of course. Now I've got all the time in the world, but when the business was going, I'm a kind of guy, I'm 12, 14 hours a day working, man.
Sure.
That's why I really care. I've got the heart for not only my band members, but my clients.
Sure.
And because it's a two-way, it's got to be in the middle.
Yeah.
It's got to be fair, but also, and I'm pretty easygoing, but sometimes I do, lose it. And I remember, Bruce Allen is there.
Bruce.
Brian Adams, yeah, and Michael Bublé's manager. I remember talking to him once. He goes, "Murray, a good manager knows when to put out fires, but he also knows when to start them." So I've always kept that in mind. But overall, Wes is, kind of guy that, when we're going through some rough stuff, we just talk to each other, and just because of the connection that we've had since that younger age, that works.
That's good. Yeah. So you've got at least an ally in recovery that you can lean on.
Yeah. And Donna, with Donna being here for me, it's, because we work together and we're husband and wife, but it's funny when we're working together, I'm not the husband, she's not the wife. I'm
Sure.
the manager. She is, for lack of a better word, talent.
Yeah, sure.
Right? We don't, at the very end of the night, whatever, I'll come up and I'll give her a kiss and I'll go, "Great job. You sang great, honey." And so that is a really good sort of boundary that we have. But being as, working with musicians or anybody, especially musicians, it's such a tight relationship and close, not only physically, but spiritually, emotionally, where I'm not the best. The biggest thing I think I've learned is not to react. I learned from Jay Fells, tell me this, Donna's always the same. I'm someone who likes confrontation.
Sure.
Or used to.
Yeah.
That's what I used to be able to do. That's how I deflect, right?
Sure.
I'm not going to tell you before what my deepest feelings or why I'm hurt. Just to go back to the abuse thing, I went, another big component of that, of me getting healthier, was going to male survivors counseling. I recommend it if you can find somebody, if somebody's, it's something now, and I can share it fairly easily, and a lot of people might be listening going, "Oh man, I would never say that." Well, for me, I have to do and say what I'm saying to get healed.
Absolutely.
And have forgiveness, right? Forgiveness for myself first. So, working with musicians, temperaments, traveling together long hours, that a lot of times I don't travel with the band so much anymore. I'm not able to physically, plus I do a lot of work where it's just not able to. And like I say, in the US, especially with Barracuda and the offshoots of that band, Colleen is there. Just a funny quick story, one day I'm watching she's posting videos of where they're playing and someone else is doing sound, and it's just like, you can't hear this or that. She phones me and I'm telling her on the phone, "Go tell this guy," and she'll go, "I don't know how to do that." Just politely say, "Hey, can you just get the vocal off of that?" And then she started learning, and then she was doing sound for one of her own things that she does. She works with other stuff, and it was just really cool that we have this this relationship and being able to do that. But
that's a lot of trust right there. Really trust and respect. That's a big deal to have developed that, because like early on, it's a friendship thing, but she represents you if she's our, acting as your liaison. I didn't want to steer that away, but one thing I wanted to address that you touched on, and it really ties into where people are at right now in this pandemic. the whole idea behind the All Access Live thing was to, number one, bring some entertainment, to a virtual sort of environment that we might be sort of pseudo backstage,
Yeah.
but and maybe a little bit of hope and positivity. And I know that a lot of people that I see on social media have posted about the struggle that they're going through with a lack of social connection. I think it's a big reason why people are, sort of going out and doing gatherings, even if they're, technically not scientific,
Yeah.
not really, it's not the healthiest thing to do. Understanding that there are programs out there for people to be able to stay together and connected, and that you're not alone, even if you're socially distant and you're not isolated. There are recovery programs out there. There's so many opportunities where you can go to websites or using apps where if you think you might have a problem with drugs or alcohol and you want to be able to talk to someone about it, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to acknowledge that you're, a raging alcoholic or your life's unmanageable at that point. You just maybe have some questions or concerns about your own use. That there is an opportunity for you out there. There are thousands and thousands of meetings. There's so many like virtual meetings that are happening right now, across the North America or across the world. You can hop on an app and find a meeting right now that you could jump in. And if you don't feel comfortable with a meeting per se, there are other resources out there. And I encourage anybody to maybe send a private message to either Murray or I about this. It's something that's really important, especially right now.
Exactly. And for those say that don't have internet or don't have a computer, the phone, the 24-hour NA, AA, suicide prevention. I mean, when I first started going to AA meetings 18 years ago, my sponsor gave me a red quarter. Do you know what that would be for, Ken?
The red chip?
No, a coin, a quarter. But when there was telephones,
that's to call. Yeah. So this is your bat phone call.
Save your ass, right?
Yep.
So,
right. Yeah.
I think something that you brought up there really with this isolation is in addiction, depending on the drugs that you were doing. I mean, certain drugs are a social drug, alcohol, maybe smoking pot, but a lot of the other ones are you isolate and hide. Either it's for two reasons. You don't want anybody to know you're doing it, or you ain't getting none of mine. Right? Get away. It's hilarious. Maybe the wrong word, but it's just, that's how it is. So it doesn't help any to be stuck in the house, but there are a lot of different avenues for those two that I'm not preaching, but a higher power is a higher power of your choice. If there's something that you see or think, even some prayer, even the serenity prayer, God grant me the serenity to accept it, all that, just something to get a mantra happening, right? Little things like looking in the mirror every morning, or putting stickies on the mirror saying, or fridge going, hey, you're a good person. This is another day of sobriety. Like I give ourselves rewards, right? Because we beat ourselves up so often, and it's negative. Every day now for us in recovery, it's a gift. It's day by day. I got 18 years, big deal, but it's day by day, minute by minute, and sometimes depending on how I feel, because I do have some health issues, mental, physical. It is moment by moment.
Sure.
And to have friends like you, Wes, Jason, whoever, my wife, a whole bunch, you can never have too many people on that speed dial. Right?
I'm glad you mentioned the call. That is an important thing. It's and it's not necessarily anything to do with drugs or alcohol or any of this. I mean, really, if the feeling is right now that your life is unmanageable, which many people's lives are, what I know, and you mentioned the serenity prayer, whether you're a praying person or not, if you look at the words behind that statement, that prayer, um, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. There's a ton of shit out there that we can't change. The courage to change the things that I can, and then the wisdom to know the difference, right? So there's a lot about courage right there, because people think that their ego, I mean, truthfully, the ego is a big reason why people kind of refuse to acknowledge that they may have a problem. It's hard to admit that we're not perfect, right? And
Exactly.
but nobody's perfect, and we all have issues, right? And when somebody can lovingly point those kinds of things out to them, and we do beat each other up, we beat ourselves up. If you can recognize that there's a lot that I can't change, I'd like to know which wisdom I have, which things that can I control in my life. The stuff I see on the news right now, the stuff I see on social media is completely out of my control. I cannot control what the government does in terms of, um, racial inequality or the pandemic, or I can't control the weather. I can't control the stock market. I can control whether or not I participate in it. I can control my reflection and what I do to respond to it. And if I can turn off those things, those external resources that I have no control over, it gives me a little narrower view on what I can focus on. I personally get overwhelmed when I think about all the stuff that I can't do. If I have, I'm stressed out about what's happening outside my four walls, in like terms of, political and environmental and
Yeah.
all those things. And so my daily ritual is I just go through a couple of things that I'm grateful for, that I really do have some control over. And it's within the confines of my house. And it's the grateful feelings that I have for people that really matter to me. This whole idea behind All Access Live was to reach out to
Yeah.
people that have been influential to me and have impacted me in a positive way.
Well,
And
it's been great. I mean, and just even let this picture here, I was at the
yeah,
P&E a couple of years ago. It was great to be able to see you up in our hometown with the flock of seagulls. It was a great night, man. It was brought back a lot of memories, those songs, and just
yeah,
it's our looking at like we can't control things to an extent is true. And what the other important thing is, what especially in say early recovery or um, just I guess early recovery or wanting to be, the first thing is, when a lot of treatment centers now, which is baffles me, is they let you keep your phone,
yeah,
right? I mean, outside issues are the 9 times out of 10 why people leave,
right.
right? I remember being in treatment and some guys, on his phone talking to his old lady, and they get in a fight and he's gone. That's it.
Yeah,
And he's there on restrictions or bail. It's all gone. UGM, the first time I was there, no phone calls at all, 30 days.
right. That's
And
common. That's common. I'm surprised that
yeah,
some places
well,
still
no,
do it.
there's this new, there's, I don't want to get into it. It's
Okay.
new way change era. You don't need to do the steps. You don't need to go to meetings. You just, what have you. But, to each their own. If that works, that's great.
Sure.
But for me, I had to not have anything to work on but myself, and keep the rest of the world outside. And it worked for me. So, that's just one way. It's tougher and tougher to, especially, I just find out, okay, maybe they're going to shut the border down for a year. Well, the first reaction is, oh man, they're going to lose all that work. Well, if the border's shut down for a year, probably means dollars to donuts, that there ain't going to be any shows down worth you guys anyways, right?
Yeah.
The way things are going. And up
Right.
here, then I just concentrate on Canadian market, which, and I should have said this in the other part is, believe me, I love Canada. I love playing in Canada. I have a lot of great clients up here. But there isn't a lot of opportunities other than the summertime to perform here.
Sure.
Right now, Blue Frog Studios, once again, is, you know, these guys have been our biggest supporter for like 6 years. And on an average last year, I think I sold out 56 shows there. In the last 2 years, probably 120 total.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they're doing their best to keep going, which gives me support. And, you know, we watched a show the other night, a streaming show. Some old friends of ours, Atlanta Crossing, guys we've known for years. Most of them are Randy Bachman's band. Just amazing. Or just to see those guys that you've known for 30, 40 years and
Doing it.
Just great, man.
Yeah,
Great.
absolutely.
So, you know, yeah.
Like the video that you put together, the Joe Walsh tune that you collected all the artists that have had their varying lengths of time. It's fantastic. And it really does show that sort of the opportunity that it can be done.
One day at a time.
It works one day at a time. If you have it, you've got a link to it, send it to me. I'll post it in the archive of this thing. I think, you know, what I really, I do wanted to maybe just wrap this up with just thanking you for your honesty and your humility. It really is important for people to hear that, you know, what happened, unfortunately, to you happens to so many people. And once you're able to sort of come to grips with, you know, what happened so that you can work those things out and work on being whole again, that's what we all want. And you're helping somebody by being able to share your story, whether it be through, you know, horrible sexual, you know, offensive and abusive situation, or drugs and alcohol and any kind of physical or emotional abuse. It's stuff that people need help. We all need to ask for help. And that's what this is all about. Starts by talking about it. And I, you know, you've got a lot of people that love and care about you. And I think that you've probably done a lot for somebody's self-esteem just right here by being able to talk about it. So we'll make sure that we link the Your New Life Recovery Center, you know, in the archive as well. Send me a link to your One Day at a Time video from Joe Walsh.
Yeah.
Anything
and
else?
It was pretty cool that when I reached his publicist, she said, yeah, no problem. Right.
Cool.
You use the video. And just thank you for this opportunity. It was something that right now I really needed to do. To, you know, first and foremost, the first part was to be able to just share what it's been like these past 6 years and the relationships with you guys down south. I mean, I would mention more names, but I don't want to leave somebody out, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many people, and you know who you are, who have really just made it that we look forward to coming down. And so hopefully that can continue on. But on the second half of is, you know, I want to help people. I like to help people. So I'll give you my link, whatever. People can private message me. You know, my phone's on 24 hours a day now, and since I've started this again, and this is what I'm going to be doing until whenever. It could be a year, it could be wherever. But you know, obviously it's something I really want to do for many reasons, is to help people, help myself, and just to you know, keep paying the bills somewhat too.
Love it.
Kev, thank you so much for this platform and what you're doing. I just pretty well most of the shows that you have just been really entertaining and enlightening, and I gotta say, you're really good at what you do, man.
Oh, man.
Something that's it's a natural thing for you. I mean, who knows, maybe it could be your full-time gig besides the flock.
I need to be on stage playing drums, buddy. I'm telling you. But until I can do that, you know, I'm doing this. It means a lot to have family like you, man. I love you. I'm proud of what you're doing. Folks, watch the archive of this if you go to kevinrankin.com. I'll have an archive for this in about 20 minutes. The video will be on YouTube. You can also subscribe if you go to YouTube at youtube.com/allaccesslive with Kevin Rankin. I do want you to subscribe to it. There are about 60 shows there so far. Once I hit my 500 subscriber mark, I'm going to start giving away $50 gift cards to Amazon, and then it's going to go up from there. So You'll see a lot of new shows coming up. I got a double decker tomorrow at 3:00 Pacific. Nick, Boys Don't Cry. Actually, if you remember Boys Don't Cry.
Oh yeah.
We've got I Want to Be a Cowboy tomorrow. And then 9:00 Pacific, we've got Keith Nolan from Bangkok, Thailand, who's done a lot of big R&B artists, and now is an expat. He's a British expat that lives in Thailand. I got to play with him last February, and he's phenomenal, and he's got a cool story. So coming up, boy, we got so many great shows coming up. Right after that, Bill Wadhams of Animotion is going to be on. We're going to talk a little bit about his birthday this last week and what he's doing. Next week is just packed full as well. We got Mark Schulman from Pink, Tommy Lee's sister Athena. We've got Kenny.
I want to hear that one.
Kenny Aronoff. And
Kenny Aronoff.
Dean Castronova will be coming up, and
excellent.
Kelly Lemieux from Buck Cherry, and Rob Dacre, local phenom producer and guitarist in the Dan Reed Network. So
cool, man.
Lots of good ones. So happy Canada Day to you.
Yeah, happy Canada Day to you and up in Canada, Alalas, and Independence Day this weekend for you guys. Everybody stay safe, and just remember, if we all do what's asked of us, a very simple chore, we'll get through this, and just try to love everybody, man. And just it's tough, but we can do it.
Yeah, we can, buddy.
We can do it, man.
Together.
And, thank you. Thanks, man.
Love you, pal. Have a great week.
Take care. See ya.
Right. Oh, Canada.
Oh.